Former Congressman Barney Frank has been picked to oversee the creation of the Democratic platform this year. That's great. Now, in the past, perhaps this wouldn't be controversial, but now I think it certainly is. So why is that? Well, in a Politico article in December, Barney Frank said the following, and ask yourself whether or not this is in line with the will of the Democratic voters, the actual people. He said, quote, over a 40-year career in elected office, I not only took contributions from the finance industry, I requested them. Yes, I took bank money, and it made me a better regulator. He continues, by demonizing finance industry contributions, we're effectively insisting that instead of 80% of the industry's contributions going to opponents of regulation, it should be 95% or more. Okay, so let's pause here for a second and discuss just how ridiculous this is. His argument is, well, I mean, sure, we all agree that the other side is corrupt and they're bought off and they're against regulation. They take about 80% of the money from the big banks. I mean, what do you want them to get, 100%? Obviously, we should take like 20% of it. Am I right? Am I right? No, because that money influences them in negative ways. It influences them to be more biased in favor of the industry and to not do regulation and to listen to the industry over the will of the American voters, their constituents, and over the long-term success and viability of the U.S. economy. But in his backwards mind, it's like he dodges the point of, hey, that money might influence you. No, because he actually said it would make me a better regulator. Yeah, I took money from them, and it made me a better regulator. Oh, I'm sure. In the same way that it makes you better at being the head of the EPA if you used to be an ExxonMobil lobbyist. If you used to be a fossil fuel lobbyist, well, obviously, you know those regulations in and out, so you should be the head of the EPA. Yeah, but you know those regulations in and out because you're used to evading them. So that's the last person who should be the head of the EPA. And the last people who should be regulating banks are people taking gargantuan amounts of money from the banks. This isn't rocket science. But I have more for you. We have a Democrat here who loves money in politics at this point. And also, we have this, quote, Frank sits on the board of directors of a major bank that was recently named in a lawsuit about an alleged Ponzi scheme. Well, that's great. Between 1989 and his retirement in January 2013, he raked in more than $1 million worth of campaign contributions from the securities and investment industry, according to CRP data. More than a third of that cash haul came during the 2010 election cycle when Frank was involved in sculpting new Wall Street rules. So understand this. When he was directly responsible and directly tasked with writing new Wall Street rules, that's when he got the most money from Wall Street. Why do you think that is? They are influence peddling. So when you have the guy who's the fucking referee and one of the teams is fucking paying him, well, that rigs the game. So that's why, and everybody can see very clearly now, Dodd-Frank, I often say, is massively watered down, and it's a joke. I mean, we had the subprime mortgage crisis and the Great Recession. One of the leading factors that led to this was the repeal of Glass-Steagall. In the solution to the problem, we didn't even bring back Glass-Steagall. Why? Well, that would have cut into the profits of banks. That would have made it so that you can't have big banks and commercial banks tied together with investment banking. So they can't do casino capitalist gambling and make money in the short term at the expense of the long-term viability of the economy. So they can't have that, so they fought it. So we didn't change one of the fundamental root causes and problems here. But still Barney Frank wants a pat on the back like, oh, what do you mean? I did great. I did well, didn't I? No, you didn't. When you were doing the regulations, you took the most money you ever took from Wall Street. We know why that is. They said, hey, X-nay on the Glass-Steagall scay, that's going to affect my profits. And they said, hey, all these other things that, would be effective regulations, don't do those either because I got to get mine. So you pay the guy who writes the rules and you get it rigged in your favor. Could you imagine in any other scenario people being so dense about the way this works? Like, could you imagine you have the NBA playoffs are on right now. Could you imagine you had the Golden State Warriors and Steph Curry? They, in a press conference before one of the games, they say, by the way, I just want to let everybody know, we just gave $400,000 to the ref. What? Well, how much did the other team give to the refs? Nothing. They gave nothing. The Trailblazers gave the refs $0.00. But don't worry, because the refs assure me there will be no bias. You just gave them $400,000. The Blazers gave them $0.00. Are we really supposed to believe that there's going to be no effect on the way the game is reffed? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And even if you're dense enough to believe that, no, the refs are still going to be professional, just to be safe, wouldn't you want a ref who's not bought by one of the teams? Just to be safe. It's maddening. This conversation we're having is maddening. So this is a joke, but the cherry on top is this. Here's what Barney Frank used to say about money in politics. Now, depending on what room he's in, he'll change his tone. So if he's in front of a room of progressives, oh man, yeah, I'm a lion in favor of progressive causes. If he's with his elite establishment prick buddies, well, then he changes his tune here. But here's what he said in the past, quote, "People say, oh, it doesn't have any effect on me. Well, if that were the case, we'd be the only human beings in the history of the world who on a regular basis took significant amounts of money from perfect strangers and made sure that it had no effect on our behavior." Indeed, Barney. Indeed.